Hi, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so excited and happy that you're here watching me today. So while we're here, I've actually got a couple of questions which I'd like to ask you. So the first one is, when was your worst eczema flare-up experience? And how did you deal with that experience physically as well as mentally? So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about my worst eczema flare-up experiences. But before I do, let me just introduce myself in case you've not come across my YouTube channel before. My name is Trudy and I am the founder of Deeper Than Eczema. So when it comes to talking about my worst eczema experiences, the first one actually goes back to when I was 19 or 20 years old. No, 19 years old. So this was actually at the time when eczema actually first started. So what happened was I had a small dark patch on my right foot, which was like a circle the size of a 2p piece, and over time it escalated onto the other leg and it went from my foot all the way up to my knees. So when I was 19 years old, I took a gap year from study. So I finished college and I was doing 1 year full-time work for going to university. So basically I decided to take a gap year and I was working as a data entry clerk for a small company. And it got to a point throughout that year when I was enjoying my full-time wage and I was sort of happy and excited. So it got to a point where I thought to myself, I don't think I want to study actually, because I'm going to have less money and I've got used to this full-time wage. I got a bit anxious about, just coping financially. So I ended up sticking with the full-time job. And sadly, it was actually the worst decision because I actually was made redundant from that job. Reason being that the workload died down, so we didn't need as much data entry clerks anymore. So obviously it affected my confidence. I was sad, and that was my first full-time job. And at 19 years old, imagine the feeling of that. So that actually led to an eczema flare-up, just the stress, the anxiety, and the lack of confidence. So I was quite lucky actually, because a couple of months after that, I had a temporary position for about 2 months. Sadly, didn't go too well. Management there wasn't exactly fantastic. It was more or less show you a task once and then the users expected us to remember that task. So yeah, that didn't really go too well. And I was literally given 24 hours notice because then they said, yeah, we don't need you anymore. And this led up to Christmas time. And I remember during the Christmas season, my legs was infected, so it was inflamed, it was weeping, and this actually led me going to a GP 3 times. So the GP prescribed me antibiotics week after week after week for about 3 weeks. So I had to basically take those tablets, the antibiotics, in order for the infection to clear. Not long after the infection cleared, I then started the UVB light treatment. So that's the ultraviolet light treatment. So if you don't know what that is, it's basically a special treatment which is designed to cure eczema and potentially other skin conditions as well, where you stand in a sunbed. Well, it's not quite a sunbed, but it's similar to a sunbed where it's got ultraviolet light, and that requires going to hospital 3 times a week for 3 months. So I was lucky then because I wasn't actually working. And throughout that time frame, there was improvement with the skin. It wasn't 100%, but there was improvement. One thing that I did remember, which I got feedback from other people, was that my skin looked slightly darker, but the eczema was calm after that point. So that was an example of my first worst eczema experience. And then the second experience that I had with eczema, and I was quite stressed out, actually leads on from that point in 2007. So what happened was, I found another full-time job in a call centre, and then after a year I kept applying for internal positions at work because I'm somebody who likes to grow and progress. But sadly I was unsuccessful getting those internal positions. I then started applying elsewhere, which then got difficult because this led up to the credit crunch, or what some people might call over 2008, 2009. recession. So at that point, I kind of said, okay, well, that didn't work. How about we now go to university and do the studies? So roll on another 2.5 years. So now we're into 2011. This is my second worst eczema experience. So I was in my final year and the final semester of university. I was doing that same call centre job because I was quite lucky. They allowed me to reduce my hours from full-time to 2 days a week. And I went to university 3 days a week. So at that point, it was just very stressful in my life because I ended up doing 2 pieces of group work. I had a dissertation to do, and obviously I had to work for these 2 days a week. So things then was very stressful, and the stress and the anxiety from coping with all of that work led to another eczema flare up on the same areas. So lower legs once again, more or less a repeat of what happened in my first experience, where the skin was weeping, it was wet, it became infected, and it was actually quite a difficult time actually, because it came to a point where I couldn't wear tight clothing. So for example, I couldn't wear leggings, I couldn't wear jeans, I couldn't wear trainers, I couldn't wear socks, tights, anything like that. So I literally had to wear loose clothing, and I couldn't wear anything flat. I had to wear a little heel just to walk in to get by, and everything was just painful. Sleeping was painful, walking was painful, driving was painful. Literally everything about that experience was painful. But with me, I'm someone who's quite resilient and determined to complete things. So what happened was, basically, I believe that I was more or less superwoman because I still completed a dissertation and I got it in. And those were the days when you don't complete work online and you submit online. You had to physically travel onto campus and had to basically submit any assignments in paper format. So I literally had to physically make my way all the way down to campus to do that. And just to cut a long story short, yes, I did pass that dissertation. I passed my degree, I graduated, and I got a great degree. So that's the fantastic thing throughout that experience. But once again, it was a very, very stressful time when it came to basically managing my eczema. Literally, emotionally, I was all over the place. So that's basically the second worst eczema experience I have. And then the final eczema experience I have is basically 4 years on to that. So rolling forward now into 2015. I was living in a house share with 2 other ladies, which was great, first of all. And then, unfortunately, due to misunderstandings, miscommunication, basically the relationship broke down, and basically it was them against myself. So that led to a lot of anxiety with myself. And a landlord also said to us as well that due to personal reasons that the house had to go up for sale, which meant I had to move. And I was very frustrated at that point because I'd only been there 6 months. And then I just started a new job as well, probably about 2 to 3 months prior to that. And I just loved the fact that the home was there and the office was there, literally a 15-minute walk, and that got disrupted. So I was quite stubborn initially, and basically what I did was just look for places to live locally because I loved the fact that I was in walking distance to work. That wasn't the case, sadly it didn't happen, and then not only that, I experienced damp in the house. So the house also had damp, it also had mould, which I didn't realise because I moved in the summer. It was now winter, so obviously this issue never came up before. So the mould and damp in the house basically not only affected the asthma, it also affected the skin. So once again, I had another eczema flare up on the legs, but also I had it in extended areas this time. So it was on my arms, it was on my neck, and it was on my scalp as well. But the scalp, actually, having it on my hair and the scalp was the most traumatic part because it led to sections of my hair basically falling out. And as a final result from that, a few months after that, I actually ended up having to cut all of my hair and having to start again. So that was actually quite traumatic. So in regards to this living situation, what happened was I had to live with my mum on a temporary basis. So that's all the way in Bedfordshire. So it meant commuting from Bedfordshire to London every day, which is also stressful in itself. I was also prescribed a steroid tablet because at that point I had to be referred back to a dermatologist. That steroid tablet calmed the skin initially, but then my whole body flaked from head to toe about 2 weeks later. I also lost 2 stone in weight, but whether that was down to a tablet, I still don't know to this day. I went to a GP again, went for a load of blood tests and other tests, etc. Nothing unusual came back, so I just put down all of that weight loss to the tablet and the stress, basically. So I lived temporarily with my mum for 2 months, which was actually quite stressful because I was away from my usual environment. I felt quite isolated, being miles away. But then I managed to move into new accommodation, which again didn't go well. And I'm going to cover that story in a separate video because that's also Eczema related. But then after that, I managed to settle in the correct and the great accommodation basically after that. So on reflection, when I think about all of those experiences, the thing that I highlighted the most about that was that all of those experiences happened in winter time, which I found quite fascinating because, well, not fascinating really, but not a surprise because eczema for myself is generally worse in the winter months than in the summer months. So if I go through a stressful time of my life in the winter, combined with obviously the cold and the time of year, that's more likely to aggravate my eczema more than it would be in the summer. Because thinking about it, in 2013, basically my first job out of university, that was actually quite a stressful environment. And I remember being totally stressed out then, but I don't recall having any eczema flare up at that time. So that's one thing that I've learned from reflection. And also my resilience level, all over time, obviously as I got older, because this is a lifespan of about 8 years I've just spoken about. So just being resilient and being obviously determined, pushing through, also helped me during that time. And finally, you know, if you was to ask me what got you through that particular experience, I have to say faith. My faith during that particular time actually helped me get through those challenges throughout that time and helped me got through. So yeah, that's the best way I can explain that. So basically this is basically my story of my worst 3 eczema experiences and a reflection on that. And one thing I forgot to say at the beginning of the video was that I'll also be writing a blog post about this, and I'll be publishing it probably in a few weeks' time. So what I will do is when that's up, I'll also attach this video onto the blog post. So not only can you read about it, you can also listen to me talk about it as well. So that should be coming up shortly. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate your company. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you visit my blog and you subscribe to the blog, you can also download a free eczema tracker which you can use for yourself to monitor your eczema symptoms, reflect, and to create your own action plan. So thank you very much for coming. The social media channels and everything is all below on the description. I really appreciate you coming on here today, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. Take care and stay blessed.